the economy going?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we're not objecting to every proposal. We're just objecting to the shonky ones. The shonky ones, that's what we're objecting to. And this hokey-pokey deal, Mr. Carter, is one of those shonky deals that we're opposing to. Now, let's take a look at this particular deal, because I'm really pleased that you brought it up. We're looking at increasing the number of pokies in Sky City by 500, pulling $42 million a year out of the pockets of ordinary New Zealanders that can't afford to give up that sort of money. That's what we're doing here, $42 million. That's how we're going to subsidise this big convention centre. But the two things that really upset me about this, Mr. Speaker, two things. One is, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to change our law. We're just going to change our law to enable Sky City to bump up the number of pokie machines, increase the number of gaming tables, increase the length of their licence, their gambling licence. And let's look at the maths of this. $42 million a year. You look at how much the convention centre will cost, $300 million-ish. After 7 years, Sky City will have paid it all off. And then they'll have another 13 or 14 years of $42 million plus a year that they can pull out of the economy. Now, that's good business. That's really good business. So Sky City is not looking at this as a way of being able to have a convention centre. It's a way of being able to increase its gambling take. Because ultimately, it's a gambling organisation. And what are we going to do? Well, what is this government going to do? This government's going to give it the opportunity by changing the law of New Zealand to enable Sky City to pull massive amounts of profits out of ordinary New Zealanders' pockets. And those people that are in doing those pokies, those people, Mr. Speaker, those people, 40% of them plus have got a gambling problem. 40% of them plus. Now, I happen to be very opposed to pokies, as is Mr. Banks, by the way. Mr. Banks spoke openly and outwardly against pokie machines. Mrs. Collins over here, she spoke out against monopoly that Sky City might have. And what are we doing? Well, actually, we were handing a monopoly over to Sky City because the sinking lid policy that this minister talks about doesn't actually apply to Sky City. It only applies to all of the pokie machines that are out there in the suburbs. And this minister has the audacity to stand up and talk about a sinking lid policy out there in the suburbs. Well, how did that sinking lid policy come about? Well, actually, we changed the Gambling Act. Oh, that's great. Who voted for that? Well, actually, the Labor government voted for that. What did the National do? It voted against it. But now it's convenient to say that this sinking lid policy is a great thing because it ultimately will end up with less pokies. But what it will do is end up with more pokie machines in Sky City and less out there in the suburbs, where actually they're contributing to community events and community facilities. So what an extraordinarily audacious and amazing plan that this government's come up with in increasing the number of pokies in Sky City. But there's more to this deal, Mr. Speaker, because the way this plan was put together is that the 5 companies that tendered for this, well, Sky City got a wink and a nod and a dinner with the Prime Minister that had got this across the line. The others didn't, and I was speaking with Vector the other day, and they said, gee, we wouldn't actually have minded a bit of a conversation with the Prime Minister. We might have been able to come up with a deal that wouldn't involve putting pokie machines up as payment for a convention centre. So, Mr. Speaker, when this Minister talks about a great deal, this is not a great deal. This is social harm in Auckland. This is about $42 million a year being pulled out by Sky City. And this is about a shonky deal that didn't give the same opportunities to every other company that had the opportunity to put up a tender. What if they had had the opportunity to sit down with the Prime Minister and say, oh, I think we can do a deal here, Mr. Speaker. What about Infratil? Infratil had the ability to sit down with. If Infratil had the ability to sit down with the Sky City, with the minister, they may have had a different deal. But, sir, that didn't actually eventuate.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to attempt to explain it to Mr. Shearer again around the necessity